The shuttle moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space. Inside, 3 humans sat quietly and looked out the window at the massive station ahead. It was called the Galactic Assembly Station, and it floated near a gray moon like a giant metal flower. Lights blinked across its surface. Ships of all shapes and sizes flew around it like insects around a lamp. Do-hyun watched the station grow larger as they came closer. He was a man in his mid-30s, with a calm face and gentle eyes. He wore a simple gray suit, and his hands rested peacefully on his knees. He was the human ambassador, chosen to speak for all of Earth at this important meeting. Beside him sat Yuna, a young woman with sharp eyes and short black hair. She was a scientist who studied alien life, and she had spent years learning about the many strange creatures in the galaxy. She held a small tablet in her hands, reading information about the species they would meet today. Behind them stood Taeho, their security officer. He was a quiet man with broad shoulders and a kind face. He did not look like a soldier. He looked like someone who would help an old woman carry her bags, but his eyes were always watching, always careful. The shuttle landed softly inside the station. When the doors opened, cold air rushed in. The station smelled strange, like metal and chemicals, and something alive that Do-hyun could not name. A group of aliens waited for them. The first was tall and thin, with a body like an insect. He had 4 arms and a head covered in hard shell. His eyes were black and showed no feeling. This was High Arbiter Voss, the leader of the Kelthari species. He was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Next to him stood a creature covered in green scales. She was shorter but much wider, with muscles that moved under her skin like snakes. Her eyes were yellow with black slits in the center. This was Commander Rin of the Dravosi, a warrior species known across the stars for their strength and anger. Do-hyun stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for welcoming us," he said. His voice was soft but clear. "We are honored to be here." Voss made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. "Humans," he said. The word sounded like an insult. "You come from a death world, a planet filled with poison, disease, and predators. And yet you are soft. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor. How did your species survive?" Do-hyun smiled gently. "We helped each other," he said. "We worked together." Rin let out a rough laugh. "Together," she repeated. "The prey animals of your world must have loved eating you." Yuna stepped forward. "Actually," she said, "we ate most of them. Or we made them our friends." Rin's yellow eyes narrowed. She did not like this answer. Voss waved one of his 4 arms. "Come," he said. "The council waits. You will present your case for membership today. Many species have tried. Most have failed." They walked through long hallways filled with aliens of every kind. Some were small and covered in fur. Some were tall and made of what looked like living stone. Some floated in tanks of strange liquid. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. Do-hyun felt their eyes on him. He knew what they were thinking. Humans were new to space. They had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. To these ancient species, humans were babies, weak, unimportant, dangerous only because they were unpredictable. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of seats rose up in circles around a central platform. Aliens filled every seat, watching with curious and hostile eyes. Do-hyun stood on the platform and spoke. He talked about Earth. He talked about humanity's hopes and dreams. He talked about peace and trade, and friendship between species. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Voss leaned forward. "You speak well," he said. "But words are easy. We have studied your species. You evolved on a world filled with creatures that should have killed you. Wolves, bears, great cats, and yet you did not develop proper fear responses. You did not learn to run and hide like sensible prey. This troubles us." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "We learned something else instead," he said. "We learned that not everything that can kill you wants to kill you." Rin slammed her fist on her seat. "Foolishness," she growled. Predators kill. That is their nature. That is the law of all worlds. Perhaps, Do-hyun said quietly. But on Earth, we found another way. The council members whispered to each other. Voss raised one arm for silence. We will consider your application, he said. But first, there is a tradition. A test. All new species must pass it before they can join us. Yuna felt a cold feeling in her stomach. What kind of test? She asked. Voss's black eyes showed nothing. You will see tomorrow. Rest now. You will need your strength. The humans were led to small rooms in the guest section of the station. Taeho checked every corner for danger before he let the others enter. I don't like this, he said quietly. Something is wrong, Yuna nodded. She had noticed strange looks passing between Voss and Rin. Secret looks, planning looks. Do-hyun sat down on the small bed and closed his eyes. Whatever they are planning, he said, we will face it together. That is the human way. Outside their window, the station hummed with life. And somewhere in the lower levels, in cages hidden from view, something was waiting, something with 6 legs and glowing eyes and teeth that could cut through metal. Tomorrow, the humans would meet them, and everything would change. The next morning came too quickly. Do-hyun woke to the sound of chimes echoing through the station. A message appeared on the screen in his room. It said that the human delegation was invited to a special cultural exchange in the station's biodome. Yuna read the message 3 times. A biodome, she said slowly. They want to show us their collection of alien animals. Taeho crossed his arms. Why does this feel like a trap? Because it probably is, Yuna answered. But Do-hyun stood and straightened his suit. We cannot refuse, he said. If we show fear now, they will never respect us. We go. We face whatever comes. Together. The biodome was in the center of the station. It was a massive glass sphere filled with trees and plants from 100 different worlds. Artificial sunlight poured down from above. Strange birds flew between the branches. Small creatures moved in the shadows. The 3 humans walked along a stone path that cut through the green wilderness. The air was warm and wet. It smelled like growing things, like life, like a jungle after rain. Ahead of them, a viewing platform rose above the trees. On it stood Voss and Rin, along with dozens of other alien leaders. They watched the humans approach with cold interest. Welcome, Voss called down. His voice echoed through the dome. We are pleased you accepted our invitation. Do-hyun bowed his head politely. Thank you for having us. Your biodome is beautiful. It serves a purpose, Voss said. This is where we keep the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. Creatures from death worlds even worse than your Earth. We study them here. We learn from them. Rin's mouth twisted into something like a smile. Would you like to see our most prized collection? Before Do-hyun could answer, the ground shook. Behind them, thick metal doors slid shut with a heavy boom. The sound echoed through the dome like thunder. Yuna spun around. The exit, she said. They sealed it. Taeho's hand moved toward his weapon, but Do-hyun raised his palm slightly. Not yet. Voss's voice came again. Colder now. Harder. Humans of Earth. You have asked to join the Galactic Assembly. But membership is not given freely. It must be earned. It must be proven. Rin stepped forward on the platform. Her yellow eyes gleamed. Every species that wishes to join us must face the trial of fangs. It is our oldest tradition. Only the worthy survive. What does that mean? Yuna demanded. What trial? In answer, panels opened in the walls of the biodome. 6 dark shapes emerged from the shadows. They moved slowly at first, sniffing the air. Their glowing eyes scanning the trees. They were creatures unlike anything the humans had seen before. Each one was the size of a large wolf, but they walked on 6 powerful legs. Their bodies were covered in dark fur that seemed to swallow light. Bioluminescent markings ran along their spines, pulsing softly blue and purple. Their faces were flat, with wide nostrils and mouths filled with teeth that looked like broken glass. Vraxen cubs. Yuna had read about them. The Vraxen were apex predators from a death-class world called Vorath. They were considered the most dangerous animals ever discovered. Even their young could kill trained soldiers. A single adult Vraxen had once destroyed an entire military outpost in one night. These were cubs, but they were still deadly. The rules are simple, Voss announced. Survive until the creatures lose interest or are satisfied. If you run, they will chase. If you fight, they will kill. Every species we have tested has failed. The Kelthari lost 12 ambassadors before we learned to stay away. The Dravosi lost 20 warriors before they admitted defeat. Rin laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. Soft humans. Let us see how long you last. The Vraxen cubs spread out among the trees. Their glowing eyes locked onto the three humans. One of them let out a low growl that vibrated through the air and into Do-hyun's chest. Taeho drew his weapon. I can try to hold them off, he said quietly. Give you time to find another exit. No, Do-hyun's voice was firm. Put it away. Sir, they will kill us. No, Do-hyun said again. They will not. Not if we do this right. He turned to Yuna. You know animals. What do we do? Yuna's heart was pounding. But her mind was clear. She had spent her whole life studying creatures. Earth creatures and alien ones. She knew predators. She understood them. Don't run, she said. Running triggers the chase instinct. Don't make sudden movements. Don't show aggression. They're testing us right now. Trying to figure out what we are. The largest cub came closer, its glowing eyes fixed on Yuna, its lips pulled back slightly, showing those terrible teeth. Every instinct in Yuna's body screamed at her to run, to hide, to fight. Instead, she did something that made every alien on the viewing platform gasp. She crouched down slowly. She lowered her eyes, not staring directly at the creature. She extended her hand, palm down, fingers loose and relaxed, and she waited. The Vraxen cub stopped. Its head tilted to one side, confused. On the platform above, Rin's scales went pale. What is she doing? Is she offering herself as food? Voss said nothing. He watched with his black, emotionless eyes. The cub took another step forward. Its nose twitched. It was smelling Yuna, learning her, deciding what she was. Prey? Threat? Something else? Yuna spoke softly, her voice low and gentle. It's okay, she whispered. We're not going to hurt you. We're not afraid of you. You don't have to be afraid of us. The cub's ears moved forward. It listened to her voice, to the sound, to the tone. Not the words, but the meaning behind them. The feeling. Behind Yuna, Do-hyun, and Taeho stood completely still. They trusted her. They waited. The jungle was silent except for the soft sound of breathing. And then, slowly, impossibly, the Vraxen cub sat down. It sat right in front of Yuna, close enough for her to touch. On the platform, someone let out a sound of disbelief. The other 5 cubs watched their leader. They waited. And then, one by one, they padded forward through the trees toward the humans. Not hunting, not attacking, coming to see. The jungle held its breath. Every alien on the viewing platform leaned forward, unable to believe what they were seeing. The largest Vraxen cub sat directly in front of Yuna. Its glowing markings pulsed slowly, changing from blue to soft purple. Its terrible mouth was closed now. Its eyes, which had seemed so hungry moments before, were calm and curious. Yuna kept her hand extended, palm down, fingers relaxed. She did not move. She barely breathed. She simply waited. The cub leaned forward. Its wide nostrils flared as it took in her scent. It smelled her skin, her clothes, the soap she had used that morning. It smelled something else too. Something that made it pause. No fear. The creature had hunted 1,000 prey animals across 1,000 worlds. Every single one had smelled of fear. That sour, sharp smell that made the hunting instinct burn hot. That smell that said, run, chase, kill. This human did not have that smell. The cub pressed its nose against Yuna's fingers. She felt its breath, warm and damp. She felt the coarse fur around its muzzle, and then, slowly, she turned her hand over and placed it gently on top of the creature's head. On the platform, Rin made a choking sound. "That is not possible," she whispered. The cub did not bite. It did not attack. Instead, it pushed its head up against Yuna's hand, the way a dog pushes against someone who has stopped petting it too soon. Yuna smiled softly. She scratched behind the creature's ear. The ear flicked, then relaxed. A deep rumbling sound came from the cub's chest. It was purring. The other cubs had reached the humans now. One of them, smaller than the others with silver markings instead of blue, approached Tejo. The security officer stood perfectly still, his hands at his sides, his weapon forgotten. The silver cub sniffed his boots. It sniffed his pants. It looked up at his face with wide, glowing eyes. Tejo felt his heart pounding, but he remembered what Yuna had said. No fear. No sudden movements. He thought about his dog from childhood. A scared and angry rescue who had taken years to trust him. He had learned patience then. He used it now. Slowly, carefully, he crouched down to the cub's level. "Hey there," he said quietly. "You're not so scary. Just a baby, aren't you? Just curious about these strange new creatures." The cub tilted its head at his voice. Then it stepped forward and pressed its entire body against his leg, the way a cat rubs against its owner. Tejo let out a breath he did not know he was holding, and carefully placed his hand on the creature's back. The fur was softer than he expected. 3 more cubs surrounded Do-hyun. He stood in the middle of them like a man standing in a river of wolves. But he did not look afraid. He looked peaceful. His eyes were kind as he looked down at the creatures that had killed so many beings across the galaxy. "Hello," he said gently. "We're not here to hurt you. We're not prey. We're not enemies. We're just new friends." One of the cubs, the second largest, sat down directly at his feet. It rested its massive head on his shoe and let out a long, slow breath. Its eyes half closed in contentment. Another cub bumped its head against Do-hyun's hand until he understood what it wanted. He began to scratch under its chin. The creature's back leg twitched happily. On the viewing platform, chaos erupted. Dozens of alien leaders shouted questions. Some demanded explanations. Some accused the humans of cheating, of using hidden technology or chemical weapons. Some simply stared in silent shock. Voss raised all 4 of his arms for silence. When the noise finally stopped, he spoke into the communication system. "Humans," his voice echoed through the biodome. "Explain what you have done." Do-hyun looked up at the platform. He was still surrounded by Vraxen cubs. One was now lying on its back, letting Yuna rub its belly. Another was gently chewing on Tejo's bootlace, while he laughed quietly. "We haven't done anything," Do-hyun said. "We simply did not run." "That is not possible," Rin shouted. "Every species runs. Every species shows fear. The Vraxen can smell fear from 1,000 meters away. It drives them to hunt. It makes them kill." Yuna stood slowly. The largest cub stood with her, pressing against her side like a loyal dog. "Then perhaps that is your answer," Yuna said. "We were not afraid." Rin's scales flushed dark with anger. "You lie. No creature can face a Vraxen and feel no fear. Your species is soft. Weak. You should have been terrified." Tejo spoke now, his voice calm and steady. "We were scared," he admitted. "Of course we were scared. These creatures could kill us in seconds. We knew that." "Then how?" Voss demanded. Do-hyun stepped forward. A cub followed him like a shadow. "Because being scared is not the same as acting scared," he said. "On Earth, we learned that a very long time ago. We learned it from the wolves." The aliens fell silent. They did not understand. They could not understand. How could prey creatures face predators and not run? How could soft, clawless humans stand calmly while death circled around them? The answer was something no species in the galaxy had ever considered. It was something humans had known for so long that they had forgotten it was special. Courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was being afraid and choosing to stay anyway. The Vraxen cubs sensed this somehow. They sensed the strength hidden inside these strange new creatures. Not the strength of claws or fangs. A different strength. A deeper one. And they responded to it. The largest cub looked up at Yuna with its glowing eyes. She looked back. And in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding. A connection. A bond. On the platform, Voss turned to Rin. His black eyes showed something they had never shown before. Uncertainty. "This changes things," he said quietly. Rin said nothing. She simply stared at the humans below, surrounded by creatures that had never shown mercy to any living thing. The creatures were purring. The council chamber was filled with noise. Hundreds of aliens talked over each other, their voices mixing into a storm of confusion and disbelief. The human delegation stood on the central platform, just as they had the day before. But everything was different now. The Vraxen cubs had been returned to their enclosures, though they had not wanted to go. The largest cub had whined when handlers tried to separate it from Yuna. It had taken 4 workers and a lot of gentle coaxing to finally lead the creatures away. Even then, they had looked back at the humans with something like sadness in their glowing eyes. Now, the council demanded answers. "Silence," Voss commanded. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. The chamber fell quiet. The High Arbiter looked down at the 3 humans. His black eyes were impossible to read. "You will explain," he said. "You will explain what we witnessed. No species has ever survived the trial of fangs the way you did. Not by fighting. Not by hiding. Not by any means we have ever seen." Rin stood beside him, her arms crossed over her scaled chest. "They must have cheated," she growled. "Hidden technology. Chemical weapons. Something that affected the creatures' minds." Do-hyun shook his head slowly. "We used nothing," he said. "We simply acted as humans have always acted." "That tells us nothing," Voss replied. "Explain further." Yuna stepped forward. She had spent the night thinking about how to make them understand. It would not be easy. These species had evolved so differently from humans. They saw the universe in completely different ways. "On Earth," she began, "humans were not the strongest creatures. We were not the fastest. We had no armor, no venom, no natural weapons. By every measure, we should have died out millions of years ago." She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces. "But we did not die. We survived. And we did it by doing something no other species on our planet could do. We made friends with our predators." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some aliens laughed. Others looked confused. "Friends," Rin repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "You made friends with creatures that wanted to eat you." "Yes," Yuna said simply. "The first was the wolf. Wolves were pack hunters, intelligent and deadly. They killed our ancestors for thousands of years. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Some wolves began to follow human camps, eating scraps of food. Some humans began to tolerate them, even protect them." She walked slowly across the platform as she spoke. "Over generations, those wolves became dogs. They hunted alongside us. They guarded our children while we slept. They became part of our families." Tejo stepped forward now. He rolled up his sleeve, showing the old scars on his arm. Long, pale lines, where claws had once torn his skin. "When I was young," he said, "I adopted a dog. She had been hurt badly by her previous owners. She was terrified of everything. The first time I tried to pet her, she attacked me." He touched the scars gently. "But I did not give up on her. I did not throw her away because she was dangerous." His voice softened. "It took 2 years. 2 years of patience. 2 years of showing her that not all humans were cruel. 2 years of sitting quietly beside her until she learned to trust me. He let his sleeve fall back down. She slept at the foot of my bed every night for the next 12 years. When she died, I held her in my arms. She was not a weapon. She was not a tool. She was my friend. The chamber was completely silent now. Do-hyun spoke next. Humans did not just domesticate wolves. We did the same with horses. Animals strong enough to crush us. With falcons. Birds with talons that could tear out our eyes. With cats that had once hunted our children in the tall grass. He looked up at Voss. We learned something that other species seem to have missed. Predators are not evil. They are not monsters. They are creatures trying to survive. Just like us. They feel fear. They feel loneliness. They feel the need for companionship. He took a breath. If you do not trigger their hunting instincts, if you show them you are not prey and not a threat, most predators will not attack. And if you offer them something they cannot find anywhere else, something rare and precious, they will become loyal beyond measure. What did you offer them? Voss asked quietly. Do-hyun smiled. Love, he said. Patience. Trust. The promise that we would never abandon them. Our ancestors sat by firelight with wolves who could have torn their throats out. But the wolves did not attack, because the humans offered them warmth, food, and belonging. Yuna added, the Vraxen cubs in your biodome have been caged their whole lives. They have never known kindness. They have never felt a gentle touch. When we showed them that we were not afraid, when we offered them affection instead of violence, they responded the only way lonely creatures know how to respond. She looked at Rin. They accepted us, just like the wolves accepted our ancestors 100,000 years ago. Rin stared at her for a long moment. Her yellow eyes were troubled. You bond with predators, she said slowly. Not through dominance, not through force, through affection? Yes, Do-hyun said. We always have. It is not weakness. It is our greatest strength. We can turn enemies into allies. We can turn hunters into protectors. We can take creatures that terrify the entire galaxy and make them lie peacefully at our feet. Voss was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Softer, almost respectful. In all my centuries of life, he said, I have never encountered anything like this. Every species we have met understands only two relationships with predators. Prey and predator. Hunter and hunted. You have shown us a third way. He paused. Perhaps we have judged your species too quickly. Rin uncrossed her arms. She looked down at the humans, and for the first time, her expression was not hostile. It was curious. The Vraxen cubs, she said slowly. They have never behaved that way with anyone. They have killed dozens of handlers. They have never let anyone touch them gently. Yuna nodded. They were scared and alone. We showed them they did not have to be. Rin was quiet for a moment. Then she asked a question that surprised everyone in the chamber. Can you teach us? Do-hyun looked at her with kind eyes. Yes, he said, if you are willing to learn. 1 year had passed since the trial of Fangs. The Galactic Assembly Station looked the same from the outside, with its blinking lights and endless flow of ships. But inside, everything had changed. Do-hyun walked through the main corridor of the station, his footsteps echoing on the metal floor. He was not alone. Beside him walked a creature that made every alien in the hallway stop and stare. The Vraxen was fully grown now. It stood as tall as Do-hyun's chest, with 6 powerful legs and a body covered in dark fur. Its bioluminescent markings glowed softly blue and purple, pulsing with each breath. Its eyes, once so frightening to the galaxy, were calm and gentle as they watched the world around it. Do-hyun had named him Baram, which meant wind in his language. It seemed right. The creature moved like wind, silent and swift, always at his side. The aliens in the corridor pressed themselves against the walls as Do-hyun and Baram passed. Some of them trembled with fear. Others watched with wide eyes and open mouths. A year ago, they would have run screaming at the sight of a Vraxen walking freely through the station. Now, they simply stared in amazement. The Vraxen cubs had never gone back to their cages. After the trial, they had refused to leave the humans. The handlers had tried everything. But the creatures simply would not cooperate with anyone else. They whined when separated from their new friends. They stopped eating. They became sick with loneliness. Finally, Voss had made an unusual decision. He had given the cubs to the humans. Now, all 6 Vraxen lived in the human embassy. They had grown from cubs into adults, and they had become famous across the galaxy. Visitors came from distant star systems just to see the impossible sight of apex predators living peacefully with soft, clawless humans. Do-hyun reached the embassy and pushed open the doors. Inside, the space had been transformed. What was once a cold, formal diplomatic office now looked like a home. Soft carpets covered the floor. Plants grew in pots by the windows. And everywhere, there were Vraxen. Yuna sat at her desk, working on her computer. Beside her lay the largest of the Vraxen, the one she had first touched in the biodome. She had named her Hanul, which meant sky. The creature's head rested on Yuna's foot, and her eyes were closed in contentment. Across the room, Taeho was teaching a class. 15 alien security officers sat in chairs, watching as he demonstrated something on a screen. The silver Vraxen, now grown massive, lay sprawled behind him like a giant, dangerous pillow. The aliens in the class looked nervous. They kept glancing at the creature behind their teacher. The most important thing, Taeho was saying, is to understand that violence is not always the answer. Sometimes, the best way to stop a threat is to remove the reason for the threat in the first place. One of the aliens, a young Dravosi with pale green scales, raised her hand. But what if the creature wants to kill you? What if it cannot be calmed? Taeho smiled gently. Most creatures do not want to kill, he said. They attack because they are scared, or hungry, or protecting something they love. If you can understand why they are acting dangerous, you can often find a way to make them stop. He gestured to the silver Vraxen behind him. Garam here was the most aggressive of the cubs. He bit 3 handlers before we met him. Everyone said he was too wild, too dangerous to approach. Taeho crouched down and scratched behind Garam's ear. The massive predator opened one eye, rumbled with pleasure, then closed it again. He just needed someone to show him patience, Taeho said. Someone who would not give up on him. The Dravosi student looked at the sleeping Vraxen with new eyes. Something in her expression had changed. Later that evening, Do-hyun stood on the embassy balcony. The station orbited slowly, and through the glass, he could see 1,000 stars shining in the darkness. Baram sat beside him, close enough that Do-hyun could feel the warmth of the creature's body. He heard footsteps behind him and turned. High Arbiter Voss stood in the doorway. The insectoid leader looked the same as always, with his hard shell and black eyes. But there was something different about him now. Something softer in the way he held himself. May I join you? Voss asked. Do-hyun nodded. Of course. Voss walked to the balcony and stood a few meters away. He looked at Baram. The Vraxen looked back at him with glowing eyes. I have studied your species for a full rotation, Voss said slowly. I have read your history. I have watched your people interact with these creatures. And I still do not understand. Do-hyun smiled gently. He placed his hand on Baram's head. The creature leaned into his touch. What don't you understand? Voss was quiet for a moment. On my world, he said, there were predators once. Long ago. We destroyed them. We had to. They were dangerous. They killed our people. We saw no other choice. He paused. But you did not destroy your predators. You made them your companions. You let them sleep beside your children. You trusted them with your lives. Yes, Do-hyun said. Why? Voss asked. The question seemed to pain him. Why would you trust something that could kill you? Do-hyun thought about the question for a long time. Finally, he answered. Because being alive is not the same as living, he said. Humans learned long ago that safety is not everything. Comfort is not everything. What matters is connection. What matters is love. He looked at Bahram. This creature could kill me in a heartbeat. I know that. He knows that. But he chooses not to. Every day, he chooses to stay beside me. Every day, he chooses to trust me. And every day, I choose to trust him back. Do-hyun turned to face Voss fully. That is what it means to have a bond. It is not about control. It is not about dominance. It is about two beings choosing each other, again and again, even though they could walk away. Voss was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he moved closer. Not much, just a few steps. But it was closer than he had ever stood to a human before. I do not understand it, he admitted quietly. But I would like to learn. Bahram's ears perked up. The Vraxan turned his great head toward the alien leader. For a moment, predator and prey looked at each other. Then Bahram made a soft sound, low and welcoming. He shifted his body, making space on the balcony floor. An invitation. Voss looked at the space, then at Do-hyun. His mandibles clicked nervously. He won't hurt you, Do-hyun said. He's just offering you a place to sit. The High Arbiter of the Galactic Assembly, one of the most powerful beings in the known universe, hesitated. Then, awkwardly, he lowered himself to the floor beside the human and the predator. Bahram's tail flicked once, lazily, and the creature let out a contented rumble. The three of them sat together on the balcony, watching the stars spin slowly past. After a long silence, Voss spoke again. Your species will change everything, he said. You know this, yes? Do-hyun smiled. Maybe, he said. Or maybe we will just remind everyone of something they forgot. What is that? Do-hyun looked at Bahram, at the deadly predator who had become his closest friend. He thought about all the other bonds forming across the station, across the galaxy. Humans teaching aliens how to approach the creatures they feared. Predators learning to trust. Enemies becoming family. That nobody has to be alone. Do-hyun said quietly. Not even the monsters. Not even the things everyone else is afraid of. Everyone deserves someone who will not give up on them. Bahram rested his massive head on Do-hyun's lap and closed his glowing eyes. Above them, the stars continued their endless dance. And somewhere in the galaxy, in cages and dark places and lonely worlds, other creatures were waiting. Waiting for someone brave enough and patient enough and kind enough to show them that they were not alone. The humans were coming, and the pack was growing.